Well, welcome to the 700 Club. It's a scene of horror, ladies and gentlemen. 15,000 Americans trapped behind enemy lines with the Taliban controlling all roads to the airport. So how these Americans possibly escape President Biden's ruthless blunder? And why does our president continue to double down on his disastrous decision? The big question: is it time to invoke the 25th Amendment? Dale Hurd has more.
President Biden says U.S. forces will stay in Kabul until all Americans are evacuated, even if it means extending the August 31st deadline when all U.S. troops are supposed to pull out. For now, chaos outside Kabul's airport as thousands of Afghans try desperately to get out of their country. U.S. forces control the airfield, but the Taliban control all roads leading to the airport. Militants have been beating women and children trying to flee. The U.S. Secretary of Defense says Americans in Kabul will have to get to the airport on their own.
We're going to do everything we can to continue to try to deconflict and create passageways for them to get to the airfield. I don't have the capability to go out and extend operations currently into Kabul.
Right now, some 15,000 Americans are trapped behind Taliban lines.
We're going to get everyone that we can possibly evacuated. And I'll do that as long as we possibly can until the clock runs out or we run out of capability.
Meanwhile, General Mark Milley, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, said even though there was a possibility that the Taliban would gain power after the U.S. pulled out, no one predicted the country would fall so quickly.
There was nothing that I or anyone else saw that indicated a collapse of this army and this government in 11 days.
In an exclusive interview with ABC News' George Stephanopoulos, President Biden said he wouldn't handle the U.S. withdrawal any differently.
The idea that somehow there's a way to have gotten out without chaos ensuing, I don't know how that happens.
Democrats gave the president their full backing when he announced plans for the unconditional withdrawal. Now some are changing their stance. In a statement, the Democratic chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, Senator Bob Menendez, said, quote, "I am disappointed that the Biden administration clearly did not accurately assess the implications of a rapid U.S. withdrawal." Swift and blistering rebukes from Republicans. Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell calling the evacuation a botched exit.
All of this is the aftermath of the decision first to withdraw and then to withdraw in a precipitous and incompetent way.
Florida Senator Rick Scott taking it a step further, saying the president should be removed from office, tweeting, "After the disastrous events in Afghanistan, we must confront a serious question. Is Joe Biden capable of discharging the duties of his office? Or has time come to exercise the provisions of the 25th Amendment?" Dale Hurd, CBN News.
Ladies and gentlemen, the truth is we don't have a president. He just isn't able to fulfill the duties of his office. Well, Michael Sheetshelf is a senior fellow at the Robertson Center for Constitutional Law at Regent University, and he's here to tell us more about the 25th Amendment. And, you know, we know about impeachment. It has to be brought in the House, and then there's a jury of the Senate. They have to have a two-thirds vote to impeach. But the 25th is not it. Could you explain what that does?
Yes, sir. The 25th Amendment is designed to provide for presidential succession, first and foremost. There were a lot of questions over the first 180 years of our country about what should happen if the president were to die, to resign, to be removed from office, or to be temporarily unable to discharge the powers and duties of the office of the president. The 25th Amendment clarifies that process and allows either the president or the vice president with a majority of the cabinet to submit a letter to Congress declaring that the president is unable to discharge those powers and duties.
Well, the thing of it is, the cabinet has got to do it. And so if the cabinet is all in favor of Joe Biden, the chances of them voting to remove him are highly unlikely. Am I saying that right?
I think that's absolutely right. The reasons for putting this with the vice president and the cabinet, and this is a very destabilizing action if we were to strip the president of power, and it's something that shouldn't be taken lightly. So the framers of the 25th Amendment, those who were working on this throughout the 1950s and 60s, decided that it was best to leave this first with the vice president, who is an elected official and who is responsible and accountable to the people, and then second with the cabinet officers, so that there can be a reasonable and perhaps objective assessment of the president's abilities.
So there really isn't anything. I mean, we have a president who really isn't capable of fulfilling his office, but his own cabinet has got to be the one that initiates the action. Otherwise, there's nothing we can do, is it?
I think there's little that we can do in terms of the 25th Amendment. That's for the vice president to determine, and that's for the cabinet to determine at this juncture. I think we need to be careful, though, to distinguish between the incompetence of the president or the incompetence of an administration and the inability to do so. The types of events that might trigger something like this, if you think about when President Reagan was shot during 1981 and was unable to discharge the powers and duties of the office, there are 3 times, actually, that the 25th Amendment has been invoked for the president's inability. The first was when Ronald Reagan went under general anesthesia in 1985. And then in 2002 and in 2007, President Bush was going under general anesthesia for a colonoscopy. So those are the types of events that we typically think of in terms of the 25th Amendment. Other than that, there's very little recourse for the people in terms of the 25th Amendment. That process is dictated by the vice president and the cabinet.
Well, Professor, thank you so much for explaining it. I think it clarifies it for a whole lot of us. And some of us who would like to see the end of it are beginning to think, I'm afraid there's no way to have it happen. Well, also unfolding in Afghanistan, Taliban fighters are going door to door, kidnapping girls as young as 12 and enforcing them to become sex slaves. So what fate awaits the 5,000 to 8,000 Christians living in Afghanistan? They are fearing complete annihilation, and for good reason. And we also understand that the Taliban is beating people trying to get to the airport, beating them up, taking them out of their cars and beating them who are trying to escape their wicked reign. George Thomas brings us this exclusive interview with an underground church leader in Afghanistan.
Within hours of capturing Herat, the terror group's fighters were out patrolling streets trying to convince residents of Afghanistan's 3rd largest city that life would soon return normal.
Business will continue as normal, and people are happy with us. And with our services, they will be happier.
Hamid has serious doubts about those claims.
Right now, we fear elimination. The Taliban are going to eliminate the Christian population of Afghanistan.
Hamid, not his real name, is among thousands of Afghans who've come to faith in Jesus Christ over the past 2 decades. We've concealed his identity for safety.
There weren't a lot of Christians 20 years ago during the Taliban time. But today, we are talking about 5,000 to 8,000 local Christians, and they live all over Afghanistan.
In an exclusive interview from an undisclosed location, Hamid told CBN News he's very concerned about the future of Afghanistan's tiny Christian community.
We know a Christian believer who we've been working with in the north. He's a leader, and we've lost contact with him because his city has fallen to the Taliban. There are 3 other cities that we have lost contact with our Christian believers.
According to Open Doors, Afghanistan is the 2nd most dangerous place to be a Christian in the world, just behind North Korea. The majority of the Christians here converted from Islam.
Some of the believers are known in their communities. People know that they converted from Islam to Christianity, and they are considered apostates, and the penalty for that is death. The Taliban are famous for carrying out that punishment.
Taliban fighters are reportedly now going door to door, forcing families to give up their daughters, some as young as 12, to be sex slaves for their men.
I have 4 sisters that are single. They are at home and they are worried about this.
David, a foreign national, has worked in Afghanistan for the past 3 decades. We've taken similar precautions to protect his identity. He saw the Taliban's brutality up close while living in Kabul during its last reign. Now comes fear of a return to the days of regular executions, flogging, stoning to death, and hand-chopping.
They have a strict interpretation of Islamic law, not only from the Quran, but also from what they call hadiths, which are traditions, sayings, and practical applications of Islamic law. They take these literally.
Despite these threats, David says there's a hunger among Afghans like never before to know God in an intimate way.
People are really seeking in their heart for peace, seeking for a true relationship with God, for meaning in life, and for an understanding of who is this God.
Hamid is asking people around the world to pray for his country during these uncertain times.
The Christian community in Afghanistan is strong. They are trusting Jesus. They are working with Jesus despite the potential of being eliminated by the Taliban.
And here's a sad reality right now, folks. Hamid's family, like so many other Christian families across Afghanistan, are reportedly, as we speak, destroying Christian books, literature, and other religious materials that could potentially get them into huge trouble with the Taliban regime. Pat?
George, is there anything we can do for those people? Of course, we want to pray for them, but what else can we do to help them? I mean, it's just a surrender by Biden and these people. It makes me sick at my stomach when I think of what's happening. It's horrible because these people are considered apostates and they can be beheaded.
Yeah, it's absolutely tragic, Pat. Just moments before coming on the air, I got a text message, a WhatsApp message from another underground church leader, this time in Kabul, and he said, my family, these are his words, Pat, he said, my family is on the run, but they do not have passports. I said, how can we pray for you? He said 3 things. 1, pray for safety and protection. Number 2, pray for provisions for the displaced families. And number 3, pray for evacuation and a way to get out for those who decide to leave. And then he said, pray for boldness and courage for those who decide to stay in the country and face the wrath of the Taliban. And the reality is that as we see tens of thousands of Afghans who worked with the coalition forces, who worked with American forces, trying desperately to get out, then you have families like Hamid's who are stuck. They don't have passports. They're not necessarily connected to the coalition forces or any way, but they're stuck and they realize they can't head to the borders because the Taliban control the entire borders, all the borders to Pakistan, Tajikistan, and Iran. And they're stuck, literally stuck. And it's a really difficult situation. So we need to pray for them desperately, Pat.
Thanks, George. You remember, pray, they need provision, they need protection, but do they need the anointing of God? There's got to be angelic hosts to protect them. But to think that our feckless president said there was no way, of course there was a way. It never happened under Trump. He told the Taliban, and we had Mike Pompeo on this program, and they made it clear to the Taliban, you touch one of our people and we're going to come after you with all of the power we've got or we'll destroy you. And so they never did it. They never touched one single American. And the idea is that the last thing you would do is evacuate your civilians. You'd take them out first. You'd leave your army in place. You would leave control of the Bagram airfield. You would make sure that all of your material got taken out. That's what Trump said. If you want to, we'll turn the thing over, but only under certain conditions. And if you break one of these, we're going to come on you with both feet. I heard Senator Lindsey Graham on, I think, last night, and he was really strong. He said, listen, we ought to have a safe corridor, and we ought to tell the Taliban that if they violate it, we're going to come after them with everything we've got. And I was listening to Sean Hannity, who said he would much prefer having the people all stuck and then say, well, isn't Biden terrible? But I think that Lindsey Graham had it right. We need to tell these people we're not going to stand for this. We're not just going to sit idly by and let you persecute everybody and kill Christians and behead the believers and also force women into sex slavery. We're not going to let it happen. We're so concerned